That's Force Radio.
That Force Radio is rated M for mature, or should that be immature?
Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs with Grumps and Gramps. Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs with Grumps and Gramps. Grumps and Gramps, tons of laughs with Grumps and Gramps.
Welcome back. It's episode 16 of the Grumps and Gramps show. I am Gramps from Dallas, Texas. With me always is my co-host. That's you. From New York City. Joining us tonight is our special guest, ARTWITTOYZ, Rick from Los Angeles, California. How's it going, Rick?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
Good to see you, Rick.
Good to see you, sir. Really happy to do another one of these with you. And then, be able to do the first one.
Yeah, it was fun
Gramps.
last time.
Yeah.
So what's new in your world, man? What's going on?
Man, just same old stuff. Just basically, trying to come up with different ideas for, different photos and just try to see what I can do to put together something that, hopefully is a little bit different than what most people are trying to do. But that's part of the beauty of it, is just trying to figure out, different ways to trick the camera and come up with something original.
I hear you on that. I'm kind of a novice at this toy photography stuff, and I love talking with fellow collectors and toy photographers like yourself that I look at your work and I try to figure out what you do behind the camera to make your photos. So when we were talking about our next guest, we're like, we got to get this guy. So appreciate you very much for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. I try to put the behind the scenes as like part of the carousel on the Instagram, but sometimes I forget. So that's good. It's good that you said that you want to see like how I do it. I'm gonna have to make sure I, get all the behind the scenes in there every time.
I'm so lazy about that because, it takes me so long to even just get a photo. I'm like, by the time I get a photo, I'm like, I don't even want to deal with this behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you say that because, and I've talked about this before, Grumps, you probably know, like I'll take so many shots of the same setup, playing with the angles and the lighting and all that stuff, that by the time I finally get a shot I like, and I'll take like sometimes 25 to 50 shots of the same thing to finally get the one that I want to end up posting. Once I get to the one I like, I'm so, I want to wrap it up. And sometimes I start taking down the setup and I'm like, oh no, I forgot the behind the scenes shot. So, but I try to make sure I get them all in there every time.
Well,
I know that feeling all too well, because you'll have a, disaster for a shot, and then whatever, you got to go eat dinner, or your kid is calling, or this or that, and you're like, let me just put it away.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is that sometimes I'll come up with something that I think is simple, and I'm like, all I got to do is grab this piece and this figure and that weapon, and then I start setting it up, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I can add this guy, but I got to dig him out of a bin, and then I can add this piece, but I got to go get it from here, and then like to your point, I have stuff everywhere.
That's how it is, man. That's how it is. Like, I've got a spare bedroom in our house that I do most of my photography in, and my wife was like, "Can you clean up your room, please?" Because I mean, it is like a little kid just went in there and just went crazy, all for a simple 1x1 frame photo.
Yeah.
And I've got this whole room destroyed. And I'm like, well, it's because I got to get this to get to this to get to this and pulling out this. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But I tell her all the time, I was like, have you ever been to a clean construction site? No.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the creative process.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny too is when you do finally put the stuff away or try to clean up stuff, sometimes I'll put something somewhere and I'll remember that for next time. And then the next shot I take where I need that particular piece or that dio piece or something, where did I put that? And I'm looking all over the place trying to find it.
Maybe, I don't know. Do you do this where, you think of an idea, so you jot it down on a piece of paper or type it into your phone and kind of come up with a list of pics that you want to do, or ideas that you want to do, or is everything spontaneous for you?
It's a little bit of both. A lot of times spur of the moment. I could be at work. I wake up one morning and something jumps into my head, and I'll jot it in the note section of my phone. There are times where, I'll walk over and I'll just stand in front of my display and look at something and then, get an idea. So yeah, it's a hybrid of both essentially.
Cause I always look at your photos and I'm like, how did he think of this? I mean, and
yeah,
I guess that kind of brings us around to getting into your origin story, because everyone's got a backstory about how they started collecting or why they started collecting, and then it gravitated into the photography stuff. So I guess let's rewind it a little bit and get into how this all began and why.
Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously always been a fan of, comics and things, growing up. Growing up, I was really into Superman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Ghostbusters. Those were my three. And then I started, I guess getting, through the 90s and the 90s cartoons, obviously building that appreciation for Marvel and all that stuff. Actually became like a really big Iron Man fan through that. And what was funny was it was even before the movies and everything, like before Disney kind of popularized, a lot of the B and C characters with Marvel. And, little by little, I remember probably like 2004, 2005, I started collecting, the Toy Biz Marvel Legends. I'd pick up like the Thor Buster, or I'd pick up, the 2-pack face-off 2-packs with like the Mandarin and Iron Man. And I would just keep them. I'd display them, or I'd put them away or something, just to have them. And a few years back, I think it was like 2015, 2016, is when I really noticed like Marvel Legends, and I remember seeing them in the store, and I'm like, these are pretty cool because they had all the different points of articulation, but just what do they say, atomically correct or whatever. Like they look better, right? Because the Toy Biz ones always had the big ball joints and like kind of the weird joints. The paint details were always great, but they were just, proportions were weird. And these ones were so nice. I remember my girlfriend's like, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I'm like, "I want the Legends Iron Man." And I saw it at Target, and it was actually the spacesuit one that was part of the Guardians of the Galaxy wave that came out.
Oh, okay. Right.
The one that, like, I know most people probably hate that figure, but for me, it was like, it was another Iron Man suit, So anyway, I put them on a shelf, and they started to build up. And I had some out of the back box and some in the box. And I kind of just stumbled on this figure photography thing on Instagram, and I'm like, man, look what these people are doing. Like they're doing these crazy comic book panels and different pictures, as display artists. And I'm like, that's so cool. I'm like, I can do that, right? And basically what I did was I started taking pictures of like the figure on a coffee table, or just random places, and on the kitchen counter or something. And just little by little I started like looking at what people were doing and the setups. And I remember I was on it was a feed or interview or something. Somebody was saying always study the behind the scenes shots. So I would notice that a lot of people, when they would post them, you would see their behind the scenes and they show you how they did it. And so I'm like, oh, that it's pretty cool. There's a lot of it has to do with angles and lighting and things of that nature. So I gradually would start collecting little, parts and pieces of things to kind of start creating little scenes. And then really in the beginning, I was really heavy on using what they call a digirama, which is where you put a picture up on like a computer screen or TV screen, and then you do photography with the figure in the front and kind of blend them in. The trick with that though is you got to get the color temperatures to match the screen, and then also you have to angle all of the lights to where you don't get the reflection on your monitor.
Right.
And slowly but surely, again, just through collecting parts and using different things and then learning how to layer stuff, I, kind of just kept building and building. And just through time, it's kind of like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. And, I just gotten to this point. And to be honest with you, like I still learn, I'm part of groups where, we post, a setup that we're working on, and then we'll post like how the shot's looking, and then people will help you critique the lighting and stuff like that. And it's cool. Like, it helps with, getting a different set of eyes on things. And I've always appreciated that. Like,
absolutely.
People will give you some insight. And then I've also tried to reciprocate that by, anybody that's newer, or they're trying to work on a shot, or maybe they get stuck on something, kind of like solving a case. Try to lend, hey, here's what I would do, or maybe to angle it this way, or change the crop. And just kind of got to this point.
Yeah. You helped me out a few times.
Yeah.
So
and that's what it's all
really
about.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So did you have a background in photography, or is this something you've also kind of learned while you?
It's honestly something I've kind of learned along the way. My only background in photography was I used to run a specialty divisions at Walmart, and I was actually the manager over the 1 hour photo center. So that's where I learned about camera speeds and f-stops and all that stuff.
Man,
this was
you saw some crazy shit, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. We actually had these little warning labels that we had to put in the envelope and say like, hey, we couldn't print out certain pictures because it's against our guidelines.
You got any stories you could tell?
That might be another show. Gramps After Dark.
After dark, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, so it's like the tip drill video. It can only show at 2 a.m.
All right. Well, let's get into some of this toy photography that you've described. Now, of course, being that this is Grumps and Gramps, part of Bat Force Radio, we're going to start with Batman. So here we have your SH Figure Arts Michael Keaton Batman '89. Tell us a little bit about how you made this photo.
So first, when I saw that figure, I mean, for me growing up, that was my Batman. And I know they vary by, different people. And, I knew once they finally came out with another Keaton Batman, because they had the NECA one that came out first. I was like, I got to get that. But I could see in the pictures I wasn't going to be a big fan of the cape. And sure enough, when I got it in hand, I just hated the cape. Yeah. So the minute I got this figure, I actually went and bought that cape and swapped them out. And it's got the wires in it, so it's posable and all that good stuff. And then, this is like from a scene in the movie where I think he's at Ace Chemicals and things are blowing up, and he kind of like looks up, and there's like light shining down, and then there's like these fire and explosions and smoke behind him. And the thing that I was struggling with the most was I was trying to replicate that, that scene. And, obviously I don't have all the same parts. So I started with a black backdrop of construction paper, and that's kind of the black you see in there. And basically I didn't put any light on it. So it made it look like infinite darkness. And then the fence is, it's the, from a WWE wrestling set for like the cage matches.
Right.
And
right.
so I threw that in there. The water tower, the smaller water tower, is actually a Cars, like the Disney movie Cars. It's a Cars playset, and basically
I have that water tower. Yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah. And then it has a ramp on it. I just removed the ramp, and then I spray painted it. And then on the top, you can't see it, but I used like a textured paint to give it like almost like a shingle look.
Yeah.
And then the one on the right, the bigger water tower, is something they sold at like a craft store. And I think it's like the top opens and you're supposed to put stuff in it. But I'm like, this makes a perfect, water tower for a roof or something. So I picked that up.
You're like me when my wife drags me to like the home goods store.
Yeah.
I'm like going around looking for diorama pieces.
Yeah. You're like, what can I use in the shot? Right.
Exactly.
And then so I started layering it in. I'm like, all right, I got the fence, and then I layered in the water towers. I wanted to use the car, but the car is not perfectly to scale, but I knew if it was in the backdrop, of the picture, it didn't have to be in scale, the forced perspective aspect of it. The barrels are actually from Tech Deck. So
Tech Deck, I spotted barrel.
So what I do is when you buy them, they come in 2 halves. And I basically, to get that light in there, I remove the back half, and then I have the front half facing the camera. And then I put the small little like rechargeable lights in there, and I point them upwards towards the flames to give it that really hot burning look there. The columns were from a dio maker on IG called his screen name Spartacus Designs. He actually made me a full-on dio, and those columns came with it. So I kind of worked those into the shot, and then the box is from the Bucky Marvel Select figure. And basically I just started kind of layering it in and playing with the shots, and then I wanted to kind of get some of that light edging coming off of Batman. So, it just worked out well with the flames on the backside of him. And you get kind of that shine a little bit of shine on his cape and then down his leg there. And then just the last piece was just to kind of finish it out and give it a little bit of a dramatic look, was the fog is where I take some poly, like basically like, pillow stuffing. And I put it in front of the camera lens, and I just put a light on it.
Oh, get out.
Yeah, and then once the camera takes the picture, if it when you're focused on the subject of the picture, it kind of blurs it out and it gives it that fog look. So that was a little trick I learned from somebody on
See,
IG.
I'm lazy. I would have used one of my little apps that has the fake fog, but no, you're a practical effects man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I try to do is like really keep it, tangible essentially. And that's what I think that's part of the fun I have with it. I frustrate myself with it, but I also have a lot of fun with it, because if I can pull something off, then, and I can sit back and look at the product and be like, that came out great. Like, you know what I mean? Like you get you're proud of yourself, but it's just kind of cool. Like it's just a challenge. I guess it makes it a challenge,
Oh no, as I said, I noticed the fog at the bottom, but I said, oh, he probably just used the app to put, like my last Batman picture, I used the app and I put smoke. But, to hear that process, that is a great trick.
Yeah. And one of the things, I would suggest everybody does, and one of the things I heard early on was set up your camera, in your photo area and work from the back forward. Because the back is, the importance of that is because, like, for instance, like if you're using poster board, it's only so big. So you know, I always start with that, and then I get that into the frame, and then once I have like, you know, my bookshelf or something cut out of, you know, that's not in the frame, then I work forward. And then like with that picture, it was a lot of layering things in forward and adjusting the Batmobile. And you know, Grumps, you know, I was telling you about this. I always work with the rule of thirds, where depending on what my subject is, I try to make the shot even all the way across. So if it's just Batman, he's in the center and everything's balanced on both sides of him. If it's three people, you know, somebody's in 1/3 of each part of the picture, and, you know, just kind of work at it that way. But that's the biggest thing, is like set the camera up, turn it on, and you kind of have to be quick because sometimes your camera battery will die, but start, you know, looking through the viewfinder and setting up your stuff. And then usually that helps with, you know, getting the picture done. I used to set up everything and then try to put the camera on it, but that never worked out really well.
I really liked this one where it's like a sequence of Wolverine just kicking some ass.
Yeah. So that was for an October contest, and the theme for that day was Catch These Hands. And I just, you know, I had the 3 Wolverine figures. The one in the back is from one of the, I think it was one of the Build-A-Figure waves. He's kind of got the darker yellow, or almost like the orange. And then the two front ones are from the Love Triangle 3-pack. And I was just trying to give it a, you know, like he's slicing up 3 different dudes using 3 different motions to kind of give it like still movement or whatever they call it.
Right.
Yeah, and then just throw the blood effects in there just for fun.
Now, this is a great shot, not just because of the subject matter, but also the technique you used to make this shot. Talk us through how you made this photo.
So I actually, in my office at work, I have a picture of Jordan in that pose, and it hangs on my wall. And I always wanted to try to recreate that. When they came out with the Mafex Jordan, I'm like, I'm going to try this. So I got the Mafex Jordan. I needed a hoop. Went on eBay, and then McFarlane makes, I think it's McFarlane makes that hoop just for the McFarlane basketball figures. And basically from there, I used what was called it's called the glass technique, where you can set the figures on glass and then you shoot the angle. Yeah, that picture there. I shot the picture from under the glass upwards, and you know, I just put an empty basketball court on the end of the screen, and then it usually comes. And it's funny, like the glass doesn't even have to be perfect sometimes. Like it, for some reason, like because your focus is on Jordan, the camera almost looks past the glass onto the subject, and the glass, even if there's anything on it, it all just disappears. The biggest challenge with this though is that, like, you can see where Jordan, you know, like we're looking at the top down, you can see that reflection of Jordan. Sometimes, you know, on your angles, you'll get a light that comes through, and then you see the reflection, or you'll get the figure's reflection. So you really have to, like, it took me, believe it or not, as simple as that looks, it took me a while to, you know, kind of like configure and tweak and massage everything to the point where there was no reflections in the glass. And then I was able to get the shot from the bottom going forward or upward.
I mean, you're right. It looks simple, but I can just see the process on this. This took a lot of work. Yeah.
And again, you know, just trying to get the lights not to reflect on the screen and all that stuff. But yeah, it was happy with the way it came out. I kind of wanted to have more of the basketball hoop in the screen. But unfortunately, with just the limited piece of the glasses, I wish I had a bigger piece of glass, basically. But using what I had to cut out some of it in the cropping process. But you know, the end product, I was pretty happy with it.
So with the glass, you mentioned that this one, you kind of did the same thing a little bit, right?
Yeah. So this one there's a piece of glass on the side of Raphael closest to the camera, and then there's a piece of glass on the back side of Raphael. So this is like I've only done really 2 pictures. I call it the rare dual glass technique. But the object I was trying to get was, you know, he's sliding across the sewer floor, and he just uses his size to slice up, you know, a few of the mousers, and to kind of portray the depth of him using both sides to kind of, you know, do it versus just, you know, having it on one piece of glass and it looking like it was on one side of his body. I threw in the second piece, and the mouser parts, you know, they just kind of pop apart. So those are stuck to the glass with like the blue sticky tack.
Okay.
But again, like you could see, there's a lot of layering there. There's a layer, you know, there's the effect, and then saran wrap is, you know, kind of makes it look like water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have
That's
glass,
cool.
and then you have more saran wrap and Raphael. Then you have glass, and then you have more saran wrap. Yeah.
So you made the splashes with saran wrap, or just the knee level water?
Yeah. So the swoosh kind of effect there, that's a Bandai Tamashii Nations effect.
Okay.
But the plastic that you see that's on the table, that's all saran wrap, where I just pulled it out and then I kind of lay it there and then I wrinkle it enough to make it look like water, you know, ripples of water.
I see something like this and I'm like, how in the world did this go to this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. So crazy.
Get it.
So good.
And I actually built that that diorama wall, the sewer wall in the background. That's a Tech Deck half pipe that I found at Target.
Yes.
And I spray painted it. Then I dry brushed the grate with like a silver to give it a realistic metal look. And then the brick is all it's textured brick paper that I ordered on eBay, and I stuck it to the pink foam, like the pink insulation foam, and then I cut out the circle and then stuck the sewer in there. And then all the piping is those, you know, those straws that kids can buy where they can connect them and they make silly straws and they go all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's the sewer pipes on that picture are all those silly straws. So I just made them and make them look like they're going into the wall, spray painted them black. And then I take a sponge with a rust colored paint, and I dab the sponge onto the pipes to give it the rust look.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, this photo really got my attention. I'm a huge Daredevil fan, but you know, this right here, you know, one thing I noticed with a lot of your art is that you're telling a story. It's not just, hey, look at these guys fighting.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
You use your figures. I see you more as a storyteller than just a photographer, you know?
No, I appreciate that. This was another one that there's an idea that popped into my head at one point. I had kind of made this custom. I guess it's a custom, but it's more of a kit bash. I made this Daredevil a while back, and I actually took some Halloween blood effects, and put them on him. And you know, and like even in the show, you know, he'd always get you know, beat up really bad, and you know, he'd have to get you know, the nurses or Claire would always have to fix him up. And so I made this kit bash for that shot, and I kind of just kept him in that form, you know, kind of like he just took the top half of his suit off and he was, you know, he's just beat down. And so I had it sitting around, and then I got that diorama a while back, and I always play with that diorama where I take a piece of colored poster board and stick it behind the window, and then I shine really bright light off of it so that it bounces off of it, and it creates that orange in the window, kind of like the sun setting basically. And I just thought, you know, like there were so many scenes in that movie or in that show, and even in the comics, where, you know, it's dark and he's you know, he's talking to the, you know, the pastor or the you know, in the, was it the confessional, or he's in his apartment building or something like that. And one of the scenes I remember him, like, you know, kind of training in the old gym or whatever that his dad, you know, would train in and stuff like that. And I just thought, like, no one's ever really done that with him, like where he's kind of like half suited up, but also like still trying to get better, even though he's been through a lot. And so I came up with that, like basically him just getting done working out, fighting. If you look closely too, like he actually has sweat on him. I took a really fine
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, spray bottle, and I just kind of give him a quick spritz and got like some beads of sweat going on there.
And you also correct me if I'm wrong, but you put the Iron Fist forearms on him, correct?
Yeah, so I put the Iron Fist forearms on him. The bodies is actually Shang-Chi. The lower body, the lower half of the lower legs, those are actually from the original Daredevil figure. And the boots, what I did was, because if you remember that original Daredevil figure, he didn't really have boots. He just had like different colors where his boots would be.
Yeah.
Those are from the Captain America from I can't remember what wave that was, but I kind of heat and popped them and switched them out a long time ago just for the Daredevil. And so when I swapped the lower legs onto the Shang-Chi, I just swapped the whole thing over.
Cool. That's a good idea. I like that.
He's a mixture of a lot of things. And then the head came with the vintage Daredevil that came out on the card a little while back.
I'm going to steal this idea.
Yeah. Totally go for it. The U.S. flag came with the John Jones figure. And in the scene in the show, in the boxing gym, there's a flag on the wall. And then in the right-hand side, you could barely see it, but there's a locker back there. So I threw that in as well.
Very cool.
Where's the ring from?
The what? Oh, the ring. It's
the ring?
It's one of the WWE rings. I have two.
Okay.
I have one that came with the ropes were all white, and me, my girlfriend, and my daughter. One of us had a red Sharpie, and one of us had a blue Sharpie, and we kind of colored them in. And made the red, white, and blue to make it look like the classic old school WWF rings. And I took a couple shots with that too, where I had Bret the Hitman Hart in the classic ring, fighting the British Bulldog. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this one because you literally made, scenes from the movie of, 89 Batman.
Yeah. So this one started out as me, the bottom right-hand corner with the Joker kind of sitting in the office. That was kind of in the scene where he kills Jack Palance, and then he goes behind his desk and does the whole "Wait till they get a load of me" thing. So it started out with that shot, and then I was like, it'd be cool if I could somehow work this into his origin, and I started putting together the other stuff. The vat of the chemicals there. My girlfriend actually made that. She took like a metal bowl and I think like food coloring, and she kind of made that. And then he's actually on a piece of glass. So there's a piece of glass over top of that. Yeah. And then he's laying on the piece of glass. And then I just started working it in. I figure, I'll have it. Because if you remember the movie, he knocks him off the side. Well, actually, like something hits him, right? And he grabs his face and he falls over, and Batman goes to grab him, but he doesn't get there in time. And then you see him fall into the vat, and then Batman's like looking over, and then somebody goes, "Hey!" And then he he disappears, and then they show a Joker in that like underground surgery,
the doctor's seat.
Yeah. So I was like, how can I recreate that? So, the doctor is actually one of the head is from the J. Jonah Jameson. I just figured if I shot it from the back. Yeah. And then to the left of him, that tray is those are tools from Hobby Lobby. And I put them on a tray. Like I had my daughter had this like tray for her Barbies. I lined it in foil to give it that metal tray look like you'd see in a surgeon's room or whatever, and then put those little tools on there, and I put a little blood on them, and then wrapped up the Joker head and the chair to kind of recreate the surgeon's chair. I actually used a Professor X wheelchair
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured like, yeah, from the back, this kind of looks like something that would be in a doctor's office. So I threw that in there and came up with that. You know, sometimes trying to crop those to get them into the shot where you can panel them out to make like that comic look is sometimes that's one of the most challenging things too, because you're like, you know, playing with the sizes, trying to get them all like, you know, to work out.
I saw some of the Diamond Select accessories or dial pieces in that picture as well.
Yeah, the Joker's office. Yeah, the bookshelves.
And I think you're using the fire escape in the top two pictures.
Yeah, so the fire escape is the railing, and then it has the what's that diode called? The ubiquitous. I have that in the background. The lower left picture, the wall is the wall from the Extreme Sets sewer, and then the Dio Joker sitting in, that's the Lori dollhouse from Target. I repainted it, and then I made it look like it can be an office building, it could be an apartment building, and then and then I have the bookshelves against the wall, and those are from the Diamond Select Gotham figures. The table, I believe, is the one from was it the Arkham Knights game that came with the Joker statue where he's like stabbing the table and all the TVs are behind him?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I just removed it from that base, and then I used it in the shot here.
I see so many people that do that, and I have that statue, and I'm looking at it, and I want to do that, but I don't. I'm too scared to take it apart.
I'm the
same way, Gramps.
Yeah, I just kind of like wiggle the table, and the little pegs that go into that base, they just kind of pulled out. Like I can reassemble it back to normal if I wanted.
Like, do you even have to use like any heat to?
Nope. No, I didn't use. You know, even the Joker, his hand is gripping the knife, so you could kind of work the knife out of his hand, and then you could just kind of shimmy him off of there too. So if you ever want to use it and then put it back to normal, he's got to be careful, but it will work. If you notice in that picture too, I put a newspaper on the floor because remember he's looking at a newspaper, and so I threw the newspaper on the floor too. It's kind of subtle, but it's there.
I love
the city in the background is that from the NECA dial?
Yeah, that's the NECA dial one. Sometimes I'll use the NECA dial, and then sometimes I'll actually set that on the table in front of the TV, and then I'll put a city backdrop on the TV. So you know, depending on what time of day I want to depict, I'll use different shots on the TV to act as the window.
That's fascinating.
Talk us through this one.
So this one, this was for a contest that ACBA had, and they in the month of October called ARTWITTOYZ, and each day there's a theme. And the theme for this one was rage. And I was talking to a buddy of mine on IG, and I was like, the thing that makes me the most mad is when I'm sitting there and I'm setting up a shot, and then one figure falls or a light falls, and then it hits another one, and they all just go crashing down, right?
Yeah, the domino effect.
Yeah, and I'm like, that angers me more than anything, especially when I sit down and I'm getting ready to hit the button to snap the shot, and the figure starts to fall. So I said I want to depict that in a photo form. So basically, like I took the body from the movie, who's that, Claw? And his forearms are actually the forearms from the 6-armed Spider-Man. So because like the Claw figure has like tattoos and stuff, so I swapped those out to give him like normal forearms, and then used a Peter Parker head, and then those little figurines I think came from like a dollar store or something, and basically like it just like once I knew what I wanted to shoot, I started, I guess, replaying in my mind like the different things that happened to me when I'm getting ready to shoot a shot. And I'm like, all right, like I just got to recreate that. Like I grabbed 2 figures and I'm like, hey, these are what's going on in my picture. And I set them up. I even used the fuzz there, like, you know, how I use it in the shots where I put it at the bottom to create the fog. And, you know, it was just like little by little I came up with it. And then the last thing that I did was I was like, well, I got to give the effect of them falling. So I printed out those little, you know, where it says bang and plop and wham. I printed those out, and you know, we cut them out, and then I used a Sharpie to line them just to clean them up so the edges have that nice, you know, black edge. And those are on little wires that are kind of hidden behind the figures or in amongst the poly. And then the last picture where he's like, basically he's like, F this, you know, sweeps them all off the table onto the floor. That the swiping effect is a Tamashii Nation swipe effect. And then I just kind of put the poly in there, and then all the figures are floating on wires. So like they're all wires, and then the way I just layered them to the point where, you know, each figure as it's layered in front covers the wire of the figure behind it, to kind of give it that like in midair effect.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then
that's the same textured paper you mentioned. Drink.
What's that?
I said that's the same textured paper you were speaking about earlier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, hey, how do I come up with, like, you know, I got to make something to the backdrop. So I cut that out. That the thing that he's taking the picture in front of is it's a piece of Marvel Legends packaging that I cut out, and then the bricks, you know, to your point, Grumps, that it's not the same bricks I use for the sewer. It's actually brickwork. They sell it at Hobby Lobby, and this is all inside that Lori dollhouse. So that same picture that the Joker that was we just showed, this is inside of that same. You know, basically it's a Dio at this point, but to cover up the walls that were from the original Dio, I bought that brickwork and, you know, just used hot glue and then made bricks for the little apartment building thing.
Wow.
So
I love it. You put a lot of.
I wish I had some of that creative ability.
I know. It's like.
Well, it was funny because I'd seen someone use that Lori dollhouse, and then I saw someone customize it, and I'm like, I could do that, but I got to find it. And Target had actually stopped carrying it. So I don't know if you guys have this out your way, but there's a store here called Tuesday Morning, and it's kind of like almost like a Home Goods. And I went in there one day, and boom, on the top shelf, way up high, there was like 3 of them, and I think they originally sold for like 30 or 40 bucks. They were like $14. I'm like, easy money. Got one, went home. Very next day, as soon as I got home from work, I went to work on it.
How big is this dollhouse?
Wow.
It's probably like a little over a foot long, and then maybe 10 inches deep or so.
Okay, so it's not like a full
it's
dollhouse.
Yeah, it's not like a big dollhouse. It's it's about this tall. It works out. It's perfect.
So it's like one room of a house, then, right?
It was originally supposed to be a dance studio, and I pulled, like, there was ballet bars and stuff in there. I pulled all that out. There was like mirrors. I pulled those out. But what's cool is there's like a radiator in there, like it's built into the Dio, like a heater, or like a heater radiator. So that I just painted, which adds to the apartment effect, when you're taking shots.
Okay.
And all those Marvel, those Diamond Select pieces that come with the Gotham figures, they all fit in there perfectly. So like I've used the fireplace in there, the bookshelf, all that stuff.
Did you use it for this?
Yep. I use it in that one.
Okay.
So that's the dollhouse, and then the kitchen counter is the Muppets kitchen.
Oh, okay.
And I actually pushed them together to make a full-on apartment. I actually have pictures where you can see the whole thing together. And like there's a picture where Spider-Man is it's a little older, but there's a picture where Spider-Man's kind of creeping in. He comes back from fighting crime, but he's been out late. And Mary J is over by the window, and she's you could tell she was reading a book and fell asleep. And he's trying to sneak in without waking her up. And in that picture, you can actually see the full-on thing where I used the whole Dio of the kitchen and the Lori dollhouse thing pushed together. Yeah.
Wow.
Let's go back to this one. Now, not only is this a badass picture, but you use some really cool effects to create, motion out of this one.
Yeah. So the tombstones are Halloween decorations. The cross in the back there, that is from the Marvel Select Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So basically, I did the same thing. I put paper up. I believe that's the space paper that they sell. I think you buy it at like Michael's or something. So I put the paper up in the back, and then there's a base that they sell that looks like dead grass, and they sell it during Halloween at Michael's. And I sat that down because I was like, this is perfect to make to start building like a grave scene on. And then I put my camera in front of it, and I started layering in the tombstones so that, they kind of filled in the shot. And then I got Spawn into that pose. That Spawn is the McFarlane Spawn from Mortal Kombat. I modded him so he has ab crunch, he has thigh swivel, and he has his neck can move, so he has a neck pivot.
How many thigh swivel?
He's got both, Grumps. He's got both, not just one.
He's got both.
Yeah, he's got both. And then I removed the cape because I wanted to give him like that commando look. And then my girlfriend made the scarf. The scarf has wire in it. That's how I got it to float like that. And then I just kind of started loading him up with straps with bullets on it and whatnot. And then the bullet effect. So the effects where it's hitting the tombstone, that is from the Iron Man. So if the Iron Man figures, how they have the repulsor blast. If you can remove the middle part, and it gives you that kind of like that explosive look. And then the streams it's Marvel Legends packaging, like the plastic. I cut it into strips, and then I spray it with a matte finish. Yeah. So I sprayed it with a matte finish. And then the bullets that are floating, like that one that's above his head that's coming by. If you remember the Deathlock figure, he came with like a belt of bullets. I cut one out. I cut a couple of them out to get the individual bullets, and then I just attach them to that Marvel Legends plastic and make it look like the bullets are coming through in midair. So
that saying with some people are playing chess and some people are playing checkers. You're playing chess for sure.
No, he's playing 3D chess. I mean, look at this.
So I wanted to ask Rick, in this picture, in that picture in particular, you talked about layering.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. So you set up the camera in front of your station, let's say, and then you start to set up the shot.
Yeah. So I'll set the camera up, and I basically will take the poster. I shoot it right here, actually. So I'll take the poster board and I'll tape it. I'll tape it up with like painter's tape, and then I put the table in front of it, and then I set the camera up, and then I zoom it to where I want to maximize my space sometimes. Like sometimes if I need to get that many things in the shot, I'll pull the zoom back to where the edges of the poster board are just in the shot, right? And then then I start building in front of it and layering it in.
Wow.
And that's what gives you that depth.
Okay.
There's a shot I did, and it's probably not one that we saved. I did it for Christmas, where one of my favorite Christmas movies is Batman Returns. I watch it every Christmas Day, and I always wanted to recreate those scenes where he's kind of like in Gotham in the middle of Christmas time, and that one is super layered. Like if you look at it, the backdrop is the space backdrop. Then I put mountains, and I covered them in this white sheet of it's like a poly, but it's also supposed to replicate snow when you set up like your Christmas stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put little pine trees from the Christmas decorations on there, and then I built in front of that. So then you see the buildings, and then you have the Batmobile coming down the street, and there's a bridge in that shot too that is from a train set that I used to make like a bridge going across the road. And then in that bridge, there's like an Easter egg. The Griswold's family station wagon is actually on that shot. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's hilarious.
But yeah, that's the biggest thing is like, is, you know, that depth. Because sometimes you'll see somebody put something up, and there's people that are successful with it where they'll put something up and they arrange their shot and then they'll have the figures right in front of it. But like when you're, you know, to give it more of that realism, sometimes if you start from the back and you just come forward with, you know, things,
Yeah.
It really adds to the shot for sure.
Okay.
Also in that spawn picture too, the plants, those are from an aquarium. You know, the little plants you put in your aquarium?
I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, they sell them at the dollar store, and I just picked up a bunch of them, and I'm like, I could use these.
Wow.
I picked up from a pet store. I wanted to make a bat cave photo once, and you know how they have like just the fake rocks that fish swim through.
Yeah.
They had a couple of those for pretty cheap, and I used those to make a bat cave once.
Yeah, PetSmart was selling those every October, November. They sell those buy one get the other one 50% off, and those work great if you want to make like dios and stuff. Like those are awesome for kind of filling in your shots.
What was another one that was really good? Well, of course we got to talk about this one. I mean,
yeah.
That's just sick.
I remember as a kid that comic book coming out, and I thought it was the most awesome thing because like that armored suit, and I still have that book. And I remember opening the page, and they had that shot of his helmet. And so when that set came out a few years ago at Comic-Con, I was like, I gotta have it. And that's actually, I mean, obviously it's not exactly to the comic book picture, but I tried to replicate the comic book picture where they're facing off like that. And the lights I used are like these really soft touch lamps that I bought at the dollar store because I didn't want to get like a lot of hot spots on the figures. I just wanted them to kind of like, I wanted the light to kind of lay on them, you know? Yeah. And they worked out perfect. And then you have the Digirama in the back. So that's just I just Googled New York City rooftop at night, and that came up. And then you have the crane. I got that crane at Kohl's. It was on clearance for $5. I'm like, I can use this. So the crane is like in the back, and then and then I have my water towers, and then the rooftop is from NECA. So.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. Yeah, that's a lot of layers, but when you add them all together, wow.
Right, and that's what you were saying earlier. Like you look at something from another angle, and you're like, how does that turn into a shot? But like, it's kind of like once you drop down and you find your positioning. And if you notice, to give the figures the realism and like to give them kind of the height that they would have if they were real, I shoot the angle like the figures will be here, but I'll shoot the shot from down here. So it's like at an angle going this way. And that a lot of times that adds to kind of the realism of the setup.
That's one thing that I'm experimenting with my own photography is, of course, everyone always wants to shoot straight ahead.
Yeah.
But if you look at, comic book panels, they're just the most easiest and accessible reference for me. They don't always, draw the character straight ahead, because if a story was just told from a straight ahead point of view and level, it'd be really boring. So those angles, add a lot to, depth perception and just make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm trying that myself.
And it's good that you say that, like using comic book panels as a reference to figure out like ideas, or if you hit like a creative barrier, that's an awesome thing to do, is Google something. Like if you have a figure that you're like, what can, I'm drawing a blank on an idea for this guy, sometimes just Google it and look at the images and go, oh, that was and just see if you could replicate that. And a lot of times that gets the creativeness flowing in a sense. Yeah. And I've done that plenty of times where I'm like, I've used my ideas and nothing's jumping in my mind. So I'm like, all right, well, I want to shoot cable, and I start looking at different ideas of what I can do with cable. And usually sometimes that's how it, you just get back into that rhythm.
Now you mentioned this story. This picture has a story. What do you care to go into that?
Yeah. So obviously I used the Dio made by Spartacus Designs, and then that's the movie Venom Buck, but I customized him to make him look like the comic book Venom. And there was a shot in the Absolute Carnage book where, there's a bunch of like the Carnages are all over him. So when Hasbro came out with this, if you notice, like he has that head with the swirl on the top, I was like, well, that's from the book, but I guess a lot of those Carnages, I mean, they come in various different shapes and sizes in that comic. And, some guy gave me crap because he's like, they have 4 arms, not 2. You're missing 24 arms or 26 arms or something like that. And, the guy's like, the guy's like cussing at me and calling me a retard and telling me to read a comic book and all this other stuff. Just saying like, saying like the worst things to me. And I just replied real simple. I'm like, you act like I care what you tell me. And the dude was messaging me from a burner account, because you always know their burner accounts because you go on their page and they have no followers. Their page is private and they have no pictures. And so he was going at me because he was like, this is not accurate. You're missing all the arms. And I'm like, dude, I make customs. If I really wanted to buy 8 Carnages and make 4 4-arm Carnages, I could buy 8 and I could take the arms off of 4 of them and put them on the other 4 and make, but I wasn't going to sit there and buy a bunch of Carnages and start pulling apart. No. I went with this. A lot of people liked it. I got a lot of great comments on it. It was just like 1 or 2 guys that had an issue with it, and it is what it is. But it was like one of the few shots that I took where people had beef with what I put up there.
Isn't that sad? Grown men.
I know that when this figure first came out, I know people were complaining because I guess it's not an army builder, but some people are treating it as an army builder.
Yeah. Yep.
Like maybe you and I think Jay Hernandez and The Amazing were, had shots with like 8 of them or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess I could see that, but at the same time, you take, unless you're, like I said, unless you're willing to buy all the things and, spend all the time and tear it apart and all that stuff, which also costs a lot of money. You take what they give you. And it's kind of funny, like, we were talking earlier about the pedestrians, right? And I use a lot of like plainclothes people as pedestrians. And a lot of times people will point out who they are. Like, there's a shot that I did where I used the Michael Keaton, Bruce Wayne head, and like people would comment that shot there.
This one.
And people would be like, Bruce Wayne is watching. And then somebody's like, is that Lana in the background? And, just kind of pointing out all the different.
Yeah,
and I'm
Lana.
Like, and I'm like,
I see Rick Flag.
Rick Flag. I painted different beards on him.
Yeah.
But like the point of the shot is they're pedestrians. They were the onlookers. And I tried to pull this from the scene from the show, where he's got given that speech in the last episode, and this one got featured too, and got a lot of good responses on it. So again, I had a few people that I don't think they necessarily didn't like the picture. They just wanted to point out who's in the background. I'm like, we get it. Like, if Hasbro starts making generic pedestrians, I'll get them and I'll make everybody happy.
All I'm asking for is Foggy Nelson. Just give me a Foggy Nelson.
Yeah, I take a Foggy. Yeah.
Golly.
It's funny. I do that. I tend to do that, and I don't mean it like in a bad way. Like I like to pick apart a picture. So I'm like, oh, there's Michael Keaton, Alana, and Rick Flag, and
but you're not.
But that was a great picture. Go.
Yeah, but you're not going on and commenting like, hey,
no.
You're like, you take the picture for what it is, and I'm fine with that. If people want to pick out, what I use to make it, that's part of the the process and helping educate other people that are trying to do stuff. Yeah, like one of the things you can't see, you can kind of tell, but the WWE ambulance is back there, and then there's a UPS truck on this side. Yeah, and I just kind of like threw different things together to try to recreate that scene.
All right. What else we got
Killed it
here?
with that steel cage. You use it in a couple of shots, and that's such a great idea.
Yeah, it
Like
makes a
this one.
great
Yes.
fence. Yeah. So this one is, you have the barrels again, like I talked about in the Keaton shot, the fence, and I was just
Yeah.
trying to really just replicate, him, having dominance over the Flash. The Flash is laying on a Diamond Select base that came with the Diamond Select Guardians of the Galaxy comic book figures, and each one came with a base that you could snap together, and it kind of looks just enough like rubble to where you can use it as a base for some of the shots, and then those I guess I don't know what you call them, like those beams or whatever that you see back there by the fence. Those are the scaffolding. Yeah, those are from a WWE set too, where you put they sell 4 of them together, and they're on Amazon. They're super cheap. But you put 4 of them, and then you have the ropes going across the top, and I guess you hang the belt from it. But they work perfectly for like damaged scaffolding or something you'd see in a factory or whatnot. So, and I've always loved that Icon's Flash, so anytime I could try to use him, I try to go all over it. And plus he's small enough to where when you put him with Grodd, it kind of looks like it should.
Right.
And you did the smoke on the bottom of that one too.
Yeah. And
that's your custom signature now. The smoke.
Yeah. And the cool thing is
I gotta try that.
You can use that poly, and if you bounce different color lights off of it, like if you want to create, like red, fog, you can put like a red light on it and make that, or green. So I always try to find stuff that's versatile and where I can use it in multiple shots, and even like doing minor changes with it helps create a different effect,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a pretty good stopping point, Rick. We really appreciate you coming on, and one reason why we also wanted to invite you to come on is because our sponsor is LoomCube, and we have selected you for the June promo recipient for a panel mini.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you.
So
that's awesome.
You're welcome.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You can go on to loomcube.com and you can use the Batforce 10 for a 10% discount to buy a panel mini, but we're going to be sending you one, for free
awesome.
to help with making more photos that we enjoy and learn from.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the support. It's cool to meet people in the community and be able to have these conversations, and even if it's just the direct chats or whatever. And Grumps, I met you through the the chat on Unparalleled streams, and you're one of the best, one of the best people I've met, and getting to know Gramps through you now.
Thank
you. Awesome. So I really appreciate you guys.
Well,
yeah, well, I want to say the same to you. You helped me with pictures, and you become a good friend. And I know, certain people don't like to use that word, but I'm gonna call you a friend.
Yeah.
But I really
social media has made it easy for us to make friends like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully. But yeah, I love your pictures. Gramps loves your pictures, and we appreciate you jumping on with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me, and anytime if you want me back, I'd definitely be willing to jump back on. So
absolutely,
definitely will. So everyone, go check out Art with Toys. Give them a shout out, give them a follow, and thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night, everyone.